Not too long ago, on a YouTube channel that you're watching right now, I did a video trying to figure out how many Kenner figures were released in the vintage Star Wars line. And the video did very well, got a lot of suggestions, but I also got a lot of requests for a recount. And I'm not talking about like a political recount where we're trying to, figure out who the winner is. It was more of a recount because people had suggestions and opinions and information of how they calculated their figures, their vintage figures. And, while I wouldn't border any of them on threats, there were definitely some good ideas and some forceful ideas. And while normally I don't like to do too many videos on the same subject, well, I think that the comment section brought up a lot of great ideas, so let's jump in and take another look at this. Alright, so it's very clear there were 91 carded figures released in the US, but this didn't count the variants of the droids, such as R2-D2 with sensor scope. That was an update for him for Empire Strikes Back, where a little piece pops up from his dome and becomes another way to play. Now, of course, there's the argument about what the sensor scope is, since a lot of things do pop up from R2-D2 and pop out of different sockets and, gears. He's like the Swiss Army knife of Star Wars droids. But I don't know, I always saw this toy as having the, periscope that he has on Dagobah. Because if you look even at the card art, it shows him using a sensor scope from Hoth. But man, I don't know, that toy does not look anything like the sensor scope. It's taller, it's got a flat little kind of dish type at the top, sound dish. So hey, I don't think this toy's actually ever been made. But I guess that's a YouTube video for another time. The other big significant variant for R2-D2, other than the other action feature of the pop-out lightsaber, was the Droid Factory figure. So this was a playset that came out early in the line, and one of the droids you could assemble, the only one that was screen accurate, was a R2-D2 with a third leg. So there you go. There's also variants of C-3PO, and I'm not just talking about, how the die-cast parts, or I'm sorry, the vac metallized parts were done, but rather the fact that he was upgraded from his original release to a version with limbs that could pop out and he could put into a backpack carried by Chewbacca, which he nicely came with. And this is very similar to the modern line, where we have had quite a few C-3POs and R2-D2s, and each one is a little bit different and legitimately by collectors is counted as a unique figure. So since we're counting figures as unique in the modern line, even if they're upgrades of the same character, well, we have to apply that to the vintage line. Then, of course, there's Yak Face, who, while he wasn't shown in the US or available in the US, he was available outside in Canada and in Europe on a card. So he was a legitimate carded figure. So there's him. And then there's the Han Solo figure from the original release from A New Hope that had a head resculpt. And while there's definitely been some pushback about whether or not this counts as a legitimate figure, well, hear my argument. He's the same character, yes, the same base body, but he got a brand new head. The head was resculpted to make him look more like Harrison Ford, or I guess less like he had a giant oversized head that was going to explode. I don't know. Either way, same thing. We have to apply the rules of the modern line. Yes, the same figure had the same card back and the same name. It was still called Han Solo. Well, if we're going to make the argument that the modern line and the vintage line should have the same qualifications for what makes a figure, well, come over to my side of the argument here, and again, let's look at the modern line and how it treats this. And there's quite a few figures that have gotten a new head, but been released on the exact same card. So here's another good example of one that's at market right now, or at least the update is. This is Endor Leia, the original Saga release from, well, it's definitely been over 10 years since this figure came out. This was before the Vintage Collection. And then now she has a proper Vintage Collection release, same card back, but updated head sculpt, same body, just put a new head sculpt. So, and she's counted as a brand new figure. So applying that, there you go. Alright, and then of course there's the non-single carded size Snoodles in the Rebo band that adds 3 more characters that are completely in scale, articulated, come with accessories, and are absolutely 3 3/4 figures. And again, using the modern line as our counterpart, we have to have the rules apply to everyone. So even if it comes in a 3-pack or a 6-pack or a 12-pack, they're still original figures. Unless, of course, we're just saying carded individual figures. But we're trying to go for actual characters here. So we have our 91 figures that were released on card. We have variants of the droids, which includes R2 with sensor scope and R2 with lightsaber, and R2 with the third leg that came with the Droid Factory. Then you have C-3PO with the backpack and removable limbs. You have Yak Face, who was only released overseas. You have Han Solo, who got a new head sculpt. That's the old head sculpt. And then you have the 3 Max Rebo band members. So all of this together brings us to a nice 101 figures released in the vintage line. But wait, there's more! So I had a lot of people noting in the comment section that, well, I count figures a little differently, and there's some other ones that you may want to bring up, and hence why we're going to take another look at this and see if we can solve this once and for all. So, Jawa, right? Everyone knows about the Jawa, how he went from a vinyl cape to a cloth cape to increase the price value of what was seen as a smaller figure from the original 12 figures released, since he kind of stood out. Well, most people just saw this as an upgrade and counted as an upgrade of the same figure. Again, if you look at the modern line, we have this Jawa figure with a cloth skirt, more or less. He doesn't have a full cloth cape, but he does have a cloth bottom half. And this figure is the exact same figure as a Jawa released earlier, who had a plastic bottom piece. Now, granted, they each came with a different droid as an accessory, but that accessory is actually counted as a unique figure because the droid is big enough. It's not just like a mouse droid or, a medical droid floating in the air. It's a legitimate character, a legitimate full droid. So there you go, same thing. Upgrade with the soft goods. Next up, we have Salacious Crumb, Jawa's cackling little bird-like Muppet that in the vintage line had a non-articulated slug figure that was included in the Jabba the Hutt playset, which he was called a playset. And since we counted R2-D2 with the third leg that came with a playset, there's also the fact that he's very small, but people point out that Yoda was also very small compared to a regular figure. Yes, Crumb is even smaller than Yoda, but, as Yoda says, size matters not. Now, again, modern line, looking at it, we have had Salacious Crumb offered a few times in the modern line. He's had 2 different significant sculpts. The first one had no articulation. He was more of a slug figure. And then later on, he got a resculpt that came with a few different figures, notably the C-3PO with Jabba the Hutt green slime covering him. And, we'll get into him as a figure later in the series I'm doing, going through all the modern figures. Alright, so back to Crumb here, or continuing with Crumb. He had a single card release. Granted, it was at Comic-Con as part of a box set, but he also got a unique vintage collection number, so that made him a unique figure. And by those standards, yeah, you kind of have to count Salacious Crumb as a unique character and as a unique figure. I mean, he's intelligent, he talks, and he may have come with a playset, but so have other figures, such as Blue Snaggletooth, who also came with a playset. And why I didn't count him the first time when I was adding up, well, there's one reason. I am a moron. Of course we should be counting Blue Snaggletooth. I don't know why I missed him the first time. I should lose my Star Wars fan club card for that one. So while he never came on a individual single colored, or single card, colored, he's blue, a card, he is still a variant of a figure, and yeah, although he never appeared in any content in the blue outfit, the reason him being in the blue suit is because the figure had to meet the deadline for the Cantina Adventure set, and the non-approval, saying that Lucasfilm said that he had to be small and red. They couldn't do that quick enough, so he didn't get the correct screen-accurate red outfit until a running change for his single card release. And he has sort of been in the modern line. And we'll get into the whole who is Snaggletooth because of this. That's a whole other video. But the point is, in the vintage line, he should count. So my original notation of 101 figures, well, we got to go 102 for the Jawa upgrade. We got to go 103 for Salacious Crumb. 104 for Blue Snaggletooth, legitimate. So 104 figures. All right, are we done? Can we rest at 104? Well, there were some other comments that are worth addressing, since I hope this is the final video I will be doing, counting Star Wars figures. So things like Bib Fortuna in his red cloak. Well, this was never released to the public. This was a prototype. It did show up in some photography and some PR ads for the Return of the Jedi. Hey, even Admiral Akbar's head is backwards in this ad, so it definitely showed they weren't totally on the ball. And he kind of falls into the same category as rocket-firing Boba Fett. Never released to the public, changed for his release, and, can you really count that? There are some other slight variants to molds, but a lot of this was just based on molds wearing down and having to be fixed or changed as it went on. It wasn't a full resculpt as that Han head. And if you're going to be counting accessory variations, well, there's almost no limit to those. Some of them are more significant than others, like Yoda's snake going from brown to orange, and there's hair changes. I mean, again, we're like talking unlimited at this point if you're going with hair and eye and, skin color. If you want to count the Droid Factory, or I'm sorry, not Droid Factory, the Droid animated series and the Ewok animated series, that's kind of legit because those were carded Star Wars figures, although they were not from the movies. So if we're saying movie figures, we can back off at 104. If we're saying Star Wars figures in total, and you want to count the droids and the Ewoks, well, there's 20 additional figures. Granted, this does recount Boba Fett and the A-Wing pilot, but they were on unique cards, and they're now part of the animated series. And of course, there's Vlix, who was only released in South America. But if you want to count all of them, well, then that makes us at 124 or 122 if we're not counting Boba Fett and the A-Wing pilot, who were just on different cards. Oh, no wonder this is such a hard thing to solve. So 104, 122, 124, I don't know, you pick how many. Alright, I think we're done counting Star Wars figures, but it is interesting how this is a problem or an issue that's so hard to nail down. If you like this video, do subscribe because it tells YouTube to share this with more people. And that's what it's all about, sharing fun Star Wars love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.